Hello, everyone. Welcome to the first edition of Linkurious Enterprise Product Deep Dive. It's a pleasure to be with you today, and we are going to focus on Linkurious Enterprise API. My name is Marilyn. I'm Head of Customer Success at Linkurious, and today I'm with Andrea.
Hello to everyone. I'm Solution Engineer at Linkurious.
So the purpose of this presentation today is to give you an understanding of how you can integrate Linkurious Enterprise with your existing applications. So here is the agenda we are going to follow. First, we are going to see a few use cases. Then we are going to see a demo. And then we are going to go into technical details, and Andrea is going to explain to you how to use the Linkurious Enterprise API. We are going to spend the next 45 minutes together, including a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. You can type your question anytime in the chat, and I will be happy to read the question for you at the end of the Q&A. So to give you a bit of context before we get started, why did we work on providing an API to our customers? Well, actually, our customers are companies having different use cases. Users are investigators, auditors, or analysts, and they leverage the power of graphs, discover connections in their data thanks to Linkurious Enterprise. The thing is that they also use other tools for their daily tasks. And so we often have questions about how to integrate Linkurious Enterprise with tools these end users already have. So we wanted to offer the possibility to do just that. Let me give you a few examples. Let's say that we are working in the purchasing department of a company building engines. We have a BI dashboard giving us information about the cost of each component of the engine we produce. Okay, but what if we could leverage Linkurious Enterprise and actually display as well the supply chain of these components? That's one example of what you can achieve with Linkurious Enterprise API. Second example. Let's now pretend you are part of an insurance company and you're working in a fraud department. You already have a case management tool providing you with a list of suspicious customers. And this case management tool displays different statistics, such as a risk score for each case or the amount of the different claims. If that person is suspicious, maybe you also want to check if he or she is part of a fraud ring. And to do that, you know that Linkurious Enterprise can help, but you would like to easily switch from your case management tool to Linkurious Enterprise to understand how this specific customer is connected or not to other cases or other customers of your insurance company. That's another example of things you can achieve with the integration of Linkurious Enterprise. Third example, and last example. Let's say you are responsible for a team of analysts at a tax office. Some of your team members are power users, and they have direct access to Linkurious Enterprise to investigate complex taxpayers. Okay, but maybe that it happens that you have a large group of your team members that are actually not power users, and they do not have the same access rights. So maybe that in that case, they need to have access to simpler graph visualization of the taxpayers. Ideally, you want this visualization to appear directly in your custom developed application that these analysts already use. And that's what Linkurious Enterprise API can help you achieve. So now it's time to see how it looks like with a demo. And Andrea, it's your turn.
Yeah, thank you, Marilyn. So let's go directly to the first example that I prepared. So for this example, let's think that we are a bank company. So our main use case is to investigate customer for suspicious activities. And in our bank, we already have some tool, for example, business intelligence tool, to have some statistics or some aggregated data where we can start some investigation. And we want to actually use the graph technology and Linkurious Enterprise, in this case, on top of it, to perform more detailed analysis. So what is the need in this case? We want for sure the analyst to move from one system to the other in the most smooth way possible, so that they can efficiently perform all the different steps of the investigation. Why Power BI? So for this example, we just would like to show an integration with the business intelligence tool, because it's something that our clients is requesting more and more often, and we have to choose a tool. So in the last period, we received a lot of attention for Power BI, and generally speaking for the Azure offer. So I just prepared a specific demo with Power BI. So let's see how this integration will look like. So I prepared a specific report. So you can imagine that this is the main dashboard where we can see the different clients that we have in our bank. I just reported some statistics about the average number of transactions during the year, and the position where the transaction was done, and so on. So I can just start working on my interactive dashboard. So I can perform the different steps at the beginning. And at a certain point, I just decide that I want to focus on a specific client. So let's say River Wisdom. At this point, I want to move on with the investigation. So I would like to see all the people connected to River Wisdom. And for this, I will need a specific graph visualization tool. So I'm moving to Linkurious Enterprise, and I will try to explore the connection to this guy. So you can see that with just a click, I was able to move from Power BI to Linkurious Enterprise. And I can already have a set of results in my visualization. So I have River Wisdom here, that is the main person that I was looking for. And I already have an expanded network of this user. So what happened so far? I moved from Power BI to Linkurious. For the specific case, I have two different data sets. So I'm mainly relying on the name River Wisdom, actually to move from one information that I have in my external tool and what I have in Linkurious Enterprise. That could be the same, that could be different. It really depends from the use case. Now I'm in Linkurious Enterprise, so I can use all the different features. So for example, I can start looking for new people to add to my graph. I can use, for example, the query templates or the expand. So I'm really into Linkurious Enterprise. So I can perform all the different analysis that maybe you're already familiar with. Now, let's say that at a certain point, I just go ahead with my analysis. And I just see a new person that seems to be suspicious. Or maybe I want just to go back into Power BI to see more details about this person. So what I can do from here? I can actually do the same process that I did before. And in this case, I'm going to use the custom action feature in Linkurious Enterprise. So we will see later the details, but what is a custom action and how I can use it? So I can configure from the menu. I have a specific section to customize my custom action. And I can just use the context menu on the specific node, in this case, Alain Royal. And in the same way, I can use the query templates. I can select a custom action. In this case, I prepared one custom action for this demo, that is Open Bank Report. So the idea here is that I have the possibility to move from Linkurious Enterprise back to Power BI, maybe in a different section of the report with some more details. And if I'm moving here, we will see a similar template, but in reality is a different report. So now you can see that I don't have anymore the list of accounts in my database, but I have all the different transactions that was done by Alain Royal. So I was able to move from Power BI to Linkurious and then back to Power BI. I said we just made this example with Power BI, but this is not a constraint at all. So we get also some other names from our client. So people using ClickView or Tableau. So this specific scenario that I just showed is something completely possible also for the other tool. Let's go now to a second example. So let's try to see a more deep integration with the system, what it could look like. So again, I am in the bank company. So I'm still in the same use case where I'm trying to investigate for suspicious activities on customers. But in this case, I don't have an external tool or an external Power BI dashboard, but I have my internal application. So it could be a custom internal application in the bank, or it could be maybe some standard product. By the way, it's something that is installed on premise in our company, or in any case, something where I have some control. So you have the possibility to do more integration steps, maybe to write some code. In this case, the usual need that we get from our clients is that they would like to integrate all the different features in a same application. So what they're looking for in this case is the possibility to have a full environment for the analysts where they can perform all the different steps of the analysis. So what they were used to do so far, plus adding the capability of the graph technology. So the idea is that they don't want to move to an external application. So let's see what could look like in this case. So for the demo, I mainly created a very basic application with Angular. So maybe if there is some developer in the audience, you can recognize the template. And I just tried to add a minimum set of instructions to actually make this integration. So the first part is the search bar. So I try to replicate the search feature in Linkurious Enterprise so that I can simulate the search of some content of my database, and I can report in my specific application. So this could be, for example, the starting point of our investigation. Let's try to look again for our friend River. And we'll see later on what's going on the backside, I would say, of the application. But I was able to get exactly the list of the first people matching with the criteria, River. I just processed the information through a specific API, and I just showing the results here. Now I added a specific button to show Linkurious Enterprise into an iframe. So from the end user perspective, I'm still with my external application, and I'm able to perform all the different steps that I was able to perform before. So you can see again, I have the same visualization as before. I can still use all the different functionality of the system. So I can look for a user, I can run the queries. I have again the same custom action that we saw before. So I'm really connected to the same environment and I have the same capabilities. I can maybe switch to another user. And you can see how transparent it is for users. So we really don't look like that we are using Linkurious Enterprise. We are still in our external application. So before moving to the technical part, maybe Berlin, do you want to explain different words, some benefits about this approach?
Yes, absolutely. So different things we wanted to highlight at this point from a business perspective. The first thing we wanted to say is that when you use Linkurious Enterprise API, actually it allows you to easily democratize the use of graph within your company. You give access to more insights to more people. Second thing we wanted to highlight is the fact that by leveraging Linkurious Enterprise API, you are actually able to simplify your workflows. Investigator and analysts can easily switch from one application to Linkurious Enterprise and from Linkurious Enterprise to another application. So it's really easy and in one click. Third thing we wanted to highlight is the fact that integrating Linkurious Enterprise actually helps you accelerate the development of your own projects for which you wanted some graphs. If you compare that integration to the effort it would need to build the graph integration yourself, well, really integrating Linkurious will save you time and resources, so it's very powerful. So Andrea, now it's time to show what's behind the scene.
Yeah, so what's behind? Let's try to see how I was able to reach the different goals of the demo that I just showed so far. So before this, very quickly, the architecture. So I'm not going too much in the details of all the different features of the system or the different tools that we support. But the main things to focus on is on the fact that Linkurious Enterprise is a product that will allow you to enhance the feature of a graph technology. So we need the connection to a specific graph database that is the real data source of our data. We have an external component that is the search connector. So this is mainly the tool that is used when you use the search bar, and is the same tool that I just used in the API where I tried to look for river wisdom and I created a table. Then on top of this, we have the security layer. So everything, of course, is restricted by access right. And we do support external authentication services for the single sign-on login. On top of the server, we have, of course, our user interface. So in the first example, when I moved from Power BI to the Linkurious Enterprise interface, I actually just redirected the user to our interface. In the second example, I created my own application. So in this case, the first time I just used a specific API. So the search API to get the list of results from my query. I looked for river in my example, and then I created just a table. Just after, when I tried to open the pop-up, I actually integrated the graph visualization. So I actually put the interface in Linkurious Enterprise within, I would say, the screen of my application itself. So after just clarify something about the architecture and the different steps, let's see concretely what I did for the configuration. So Power BI, or generally speaking, any business intelligence tool, or I would say even more generically, all different applications that allow you to create a specific link to an external application. So what is required? First of all, we need something to trigger the user action. So in my case, I selected the specific feature from Power BI, and I actually added a button. Once you have the item, what you need is to link this item to the real action, that in our case is an external URL. In Power BI, I was able to define a specific action on this button, and specifically, I selected the web URL. When I configured the web URL, I selected a specific custom column that I created in my table. And in my table, the custom column looked like this. So actually, I just encoded the correct URL of what we call the front-end API. That is the API that will return the screen of Linkurious Enterprise within a specific context. So what I asked for is to open a new visualization. I asked the system to run a specific query. In my case, the query was a query template stored with the IT number 3. And I passed a specific parameter containing the name of the person to look for in our database. And when I selected this option was River Wisdom. Now, maybe someone that already tried to use the system or that is trying to look to this specific URL that I built has recognized that I never perform any login task to the system. How was possible to do this? Actually, in this URL, I used two different APIs. So this one, workspace new, is the main API to select a new sandbox with the result from a query. And I just concatenated this specific API to the first one, that is the API authentication SSO login. So this one is the API that is trigger the login through the single sign-on. In my case, I used my company account, and since I was already logged in this system, the Linkurious Enterprise was able to automatically create a session without redirecting me to the login page. So actually, I was able to make this completely transparent for the user, and was just able to move from one application to the other using actually the SSO of my company. We saw that mainly for our customer, this is the main scenario. So really using the SSO can help a lot in integrating the different applications and making the things more transparent for the end user. Second step is the custom action. So during the demo, when I moved from Power BI to Linkurious, then I was able to move back to Power BI. Actually, the concept was the same. I was able to create a custom action. In particular, I just created a specific URL and I added some filter. I used a Linkurious Enterprise notation to select a parameter. And particularly, I select a specific node of type person, and I get the full name attribute from this node. For different system, you can use the same concept. So if you're using a ClickView or Tableau or other tool, you will have for sure a different URL. You will have a different way to encode the parameters in the URL, but definitely you will be able again to use the same syntax to pass the specific parameter, getting this information from the selected node. Very quickly, some configuration highlights. As you say, maybe you saw the configuration was very simple. It's just a matter of creating an URL, and the user just got redirected to a different application. So you won't have any kind of problem with the browser cross-origin policy. And regarding the security context, I show it was possible to concatenate the two different APIs to make this transparent. Second example, I was able to integrate more deeply our application with the API. So I don't want to scare the audience, but I'm going to show some code for the developers who joined. In particular, this is TypeScript code, and this is a code running on the client side, so on the browser. What are the different steps? So first of all, I imported our public REST client library. So you can use any JavaScript package manager like npm, for example, to install the tool, and you can import the library. The second step is to instantiate our REST client. Of course, the base parameter is the URL where Linkurious is hosted. You can clearly initialize the REST client. So if you need to specify a security context, you can log in with the user credential. In my case, this run is commented because again, I relied on the fact that I already had a session open on my system. So I was able to skip the login phase, and I was able again to run the API successfully. Third step is call API. So we'll see later, I just use the search API and pass some basic parameter. So the query itself, the fact that I was looking for a node category, in particular for a person, and the source key where I was working on. Last step is clearly just manage the result. Typically, all our API returns a JSON format, and you can just parse the result and do everything that is needed in your application. Some highlights on the configuration here. In my case, I used the code said on the client side, And since we are running some code from one application to another one, mainly you will have some problem with the cross-origin policy in your browser. We do support this configuration, and indeed in Linkurious Enterprise you have a specific configuration called allow origin, and I just put here the source of my code. So if you notice, it was on localhost 4200. About the security context, we saw it's possible again to rely a session that is already open, or you can create a specific context passing the credential for the login. Let's see now very quickly the second example. So in the second example, I mainly use the iframe. Very simple. In this case, the iframe is a specific HTML component. I properly escaped all the different characters, so you can see in white the real URL. Even in this case, I relied on the same idea of the Power BI, so I encoded my URL using the SSO login. Even if in this case, I could avoid it, because again, I already had the session open, so I could avoid to have this specific redirect, and maybe just use the second part in bold. What are the configurations needed in this case? So first of all, by default, we disabled the possibility to host Linkurious Enterprise in an iframe for security reason. So if you want to use this in your environment, you just need to configure the system. Again, you have the allow framing configuration. You just need to enable it and restart the system, and you will be able to use this specific configuration. Cross-origin policies, since you are going to have some iframe hosted in a different application, you may have some restriction from the browser. In particular, for example, for the SSO. So typically in this kind of configuration, to avoid these kind of problems, you can host the application under the same domain or the same subdomain. So both your custom application and Linkurious Enterprise. In my case, everything worked properly because I had everything on localhost. About security context, again, I show it's possible to concatenate the login API. Now let's have a quick look to our documentation. So how is possible to use practically this API, and how to know what you can use actually in the system. So in our documentation, there is a specific section for the REST API. First of all, you will need to check the correct version of the documentation. So today, the latest stable version is 297. Maybe not all of our clients has the latest version, so it's key that you will just select the correct version so that you can have the documentation aligned with what you have in your instance. On the left part, we have all the different API, and we try to group them by category. So you can see Linkurious that contains the general API to check the status, all the API regarding the data source, the configuration, and I will just focus on this one in the authentication. So this is the one that I used, API authentication SSO login. The only parameter that is optional is the redirect URL. That is indeed the one that I used in my application. And the response in this case is just the redirect. So my user was just redirected to a different page. Front end is the second API that I used, in particular the Open Sandbox. You can see that this API is a bit more complex. You have more flexibility. In my case, I use the base path, workspace new, and among the different parameters, I choose to populate actually my visualization with the specific ID of a query. I pass the ID of my query in the item ID, and I also pass some specific parameters. So at the end, the user will just got the final result without any pop-up looking for the parameters. If I scroll down, I have some other API. I'm not going to describe all of them, but there is, for example, the possibility to look for the queries, looking for nodes, edges, working with the schema, and so on. I just want to go to the other API that I used in my demo. So the search capability of the system, in particular particular, search for a node or edge. I used indirectly this specific URL. So since I relied on our REST client, all the different construction of the URL was done automatically by the system. But I was able to use the different parameters. In particular, I used the parameter Q to pass the query and the type and source key. In our documentation, we also have some example on how to use the REST client application or how to get some more advanced configuration with the API key. And you can find a different example using standard requests. In this case, the code is for Node.js. You can use different libraries, for example, if you're working on the client side with the Ajax, or all the standard tool that you may use with the standard JavaScript configuration. The server is a standard REST server, so you can also use an external client. So if you want to interact with the system to automatize some kind of process, you can definitely use some command line tool or specific tool to send a specific API request. So it's not mandatory to have an application or a JavaScript code. I guess we are close to the end. So maybe Berlin, let's review together the key values before moving to the question.
Absolutely. So from a development perspective, I wanted to highlight two different things here. Leveraging Linkurious Enterprise actually allows you to smoothly integrate Linkurious Enterprise with your existing application, as Andrea just showed you. The API is quite extensive and gives you access to all the pieces you need to bring graphs to your end users in an ecosystem they already use. Another interesting point is that from an admin perspective, the API allows you to centralize and automate the administration of your graph application. This helps you save time and avoid manual tasks that are error prone. So it's really valuable from both perspectives, development and IT management. So we are going to wrap up this presentation and provide you a key takeaway information, I would say. So why would you use Linkurious Enterprise API in the end? Well, first, because it's good for your budget. You have purchased Linkurious Enterprise and your company is already seeing the value the tool brings to your business. And by using the API, you can actually accelerate the adoption of the tool by your organization and hence maximize your ROI. Second thing, it's that it's good for your analysts. Integrating Linkurious Enterprise with tools they already use allows your investigators and your analysts to get access to more insights and faster. You are making their daily job simpler and easier, and they are making more informed decisions, again, faster. Last but not least, it's actually good for your IT department. Using Linkurious Enterprise allows you to save time and resources on integrating and managing your graph applications. So you see there are lots of benefits, and we hope that we clarify these benefits along this presentation. So now it's time for the Q&A session. We already have a few questions in the chat. Please feel free to send some more as we have roughly 10 minutes ahead of us to answer those questions. So let's get started. Andrea, there are several questions. So I know you already mentioned that, but I just want to be very clear on this aspect now. So I'm going to ask the question again. The question is about which tools we can actually integrate. We've seen Power BI, but which are the tools that can be used outside of Power BI? So the question I have is with ServiceNow, Tableau, or homegrown .NET application.
Yes, so we saw two levels of integration. I would say with the first example, the first demo that I did actually, I would say that is open to all different applications. So actually you can have this integration with almost everything on the market, or everything that you can make as custom application. As I show, you will mainly need two capabilities in the system. The first one is to have an item that could be clickable for the user, so something that will trigger an action from the user. And then you will need to encode a specific URL with the API that you want to show. So I guess that almost every tool that is used for making some kind of reporting or business intelligence will have this capability. So I'm quite confident in saying that you can use this integration with different applications. The second one maybe is a bit more deep in terms of integration, because you will need to actually write some code. In that case, I would say that the field is a bit restricted, but you can still do something with some custom tool. I tried, for example, with Power BI to put different APIs. So is it possible indeed to have the result from a GET request again and to parse the result? So mainly the tool that we are going to use will be just more flexible in terms of configuration. But definitely there are different options. And all the one that you just mentioned, Marilyn, all of them are suitable for this use case.
Okay. Perfect. Next question. Question around the data that you used in Linkurious during the Power BI demo. Can you explain a bit more where it comes from?
Yes, sure. So for the specific demo, I used the dataset that we have internally for all the different presentation, the demo. So it's a FinCrime dataset containing some notes around the bank context. I didn't explore the graph, but mainly we have this river wisdom guy that is connected to different people sharing some information. So it's a specific use case for fraud. And on Power BI, I created a manual dataset to show how it's impossible to have two different datasets and still integrating both of them. So I decided to create a new one, not related to the one that I actually had in my database. And I was still able to move from one context to the other one. Of course, it's possible to get or to synchronize Power BI with the other data. So you can definitely have a consistent view between the two applications working on the same data. So it really depends on what kind of integration you're looking for.
Okay, so Andrea, just to clarify, the data displayed in Linkurious comes from a graph database. Okay?
Yes, exactly.
That's correct. Yeah. Okay, next question. Can a sandbox be persisted as a visualization?
So the sandbox, you can, when you open the sandbox, like I did in the demo, actually I had the possibility to save. So among the different features of the system, I was able to save the visualization as part of the standard feature of the system. In case the question is more related to the possibility to create a visualization directly from the API, yes, we have a different API. Maybe I can quickly go back to the documentation so I can show this specific one. And we have the visualization. So I can create a visualization directly as an API. In this case, you can see is a post call. I can pass all the different parameters that I need.
Andrea, you're sharing something because we're still
sorry.
on. Yeah, thank you.
So I just went to the documentation in the visualization section, and I have the create a visualization API. So I can create from my application a specific visualization. Okay.
Next question is about getting example or some basic code to get started. So I'm reading one question, which is there a starter repo with code to have some basic boilerplate code to get started? Or could we share maybe the examples that you provided?
Yes, so definitely I would say for any specific request, you can get in contact with us, and definitely we can provide all the support that is needed. We are going to share this specific video so that it could be a starting material as well, just to try to follow the different examples that we did. And in the API, I showed on the top, there is a specific section for the example. So from there, you can have some code on how to call the different APIs from your backend side with Node.js. Definitely, if you're looking for more example, you can get in touch and we can try to create some more content.
Okay. So can the Linkurious API be used to populate the graph database from an existing knowledge database, let's say NoSQL, for instance?
So from the different API, there is a specific group of API that is used to manage queries. Manage queries means that you can create or get the content of an existing query in Linkurious Enterprise, or you can run specific queries directly in the graph database. So definitely, yes, it's possible if you are creating your interface to get the information, and through your custom application, you can use the API to run a query, and you can definitely insert data into the system. I would say that if the use case is mainly to synchronize the knowledge base with the graph database, and you need to do it, I would say massively, so keep the system synchronized, probably you may rely also on other ways or another tool to perform the synchronization. On the other hand, if you need to make some updates or keep some data consistent, definitely you can use the Linkurious API. It's perfectly suitable for this use case.
Okay, another question. I didn't implement SSO with Linkurious yet. Is it a requirement before using the APIs?
No, this is not a requirement at all. I try to make the usage of the SSO to make the best user experience for the final user. So as I showed during the demo, I never had to type any specific login credential. I was never faced a blocking page, I would say, distracting me from the analysis. So using the SSO definitely could allow to speed up the usage of the user, I would say, in terms of the day-to-day activity. In case you don't have the SSO, within the custom application, you can use the API actually to log in automatically from the system. Or in the other case, if you're just using the sandbox API, the user will be redirected to the login page of Linkurious Enterprise. So he can put the credential there and can access the system. Of course, at the second time he will try to use the system, if the session is already active, he won't get the login page anymore. But the first time, most likely, he will need to type the credential.
Okay, thank you. Another question. How long does it take to set up the example you showed, and how long did it take to use the API? Can you give us some ballpark?
Yes, so in terms of, I would say, development, I try to minimize the different activities, also to make something that is, I would say, a good start for anyone that is looking at this demo. So for the Power BI, after creating the demo, sorry, I would say the report that was out of the scope of the API, but was just the context of the visualization. As I showed, was literally making a few configurations. So I would say that with half an hour, considering I would say the learning time to see how Power BI was designed to work with that feature. Finding the correct URL and putting together, I was able to do that part. I would say even a bit less. And for the second example, starting from the Angular demo project, I would say mainly the effort was really working on the application itself. So making a nice view, making the table and the different interaction. For the API, I used our REST client, and using the REST client really is something that can minimize the effort on the development side. So I just imported the library and I used a few functions. Actually, I called a few functions. So it was very simple. If you don't use the REST client and you try to make from your own the call to the URL, probably will take some more time. But in any case, that specific part is not the longer part in this process. It's mainly what is around the API itself, so the custom application.
Okay, quick question. Do you have any example or demo of integrating OpenID instead of SSO?
OpenID and SAML2 are the two standard protocols that we support for the SSO, as well as the Active Directory from Microsoft. And yes, we have in our documentation a specific section for the SSO configuration, and we provide example for all of them. In terms of usage, is the same. So when I call the specific API that I show, that is the / authentication SSO, this is working with all the different protocols that we support. So either is OpenID or OAuth2 or SAML2, actually is exactly the same from an API integration point of view. So I can definitely use all of them with the same code that I show here.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions in the audience? Because it's almost the, well, we said we would spend 45 minutes and we are about 50. So, so I think we will, you know, end this very, very soon. So one last question. Is it possible to use the Linkurious Enterprise API in parallel to GraphQL API for custom queries? Is that clear enough, Andrea?
Not really. Not really what is exactly the request here. I would say, just generally speaking, that when we work with the graph database, we rely on their own syntax. And today, the database that we support use Cypher language or Gremlin language. Mm-hmm. And when we use our API to run a query, actually, we mainly forward our query to the database. Mm-hmm. So I would say if we didn't answer to the question, maybe you can contact us and we can have a more detailed discussion about the point.
Absolutely. Well, thank you very much, Andrea. We have reached the end of this presentation. We really hope that you have now a better understanding of the Linkurious Enterprise API and how it can help you integrate graph visualization in your own ecosystem. Thank you very much for joining and for your questions. If you have specific topics you would like to discuss with us related to your own integration with our API, you can get in touch with us through our support. It's written here, support@linkurio.us. This webinar has been recorded and the video will be shared with you in the coming days, along with a survey. It is the opportunity for you to share feedback and for us to improve the content we create. This was the first Linkurious Enterprise deep dive session. We intend to do more of that, so let us know what you liked and what we can do better. So please answer this survey. Thank you very much and see you next time.
Thank you to everyone. I really hope you enjoyed the demo. Bye-bye.